Greetings from Samil, everyone. For the people who are celebrating Easter this week, happy Easter. He is risen. Alleluia. For me personally, I will be celebrating Easter next week, this coming Sunday. So we are in Holy Week. And also happy holidays for our Jewish friends who are also celebrating Passover this week. And also for our Muslim friends and who are celebrating Ramadan. So it's a very busy time here in Jerusalem. And as you can guess, when it is busy, when it comes to religion, it's very busy in general when it is in Palestine. I don't know if people, are you able to see me? Okay, good. So we wanted to share with you today like a special event. First of all, because holding a meeting at this time between two Easters is very difficult for our Christian community, and it's also very difficult for our Palestinian Christian community, and it's also very difficult for our Muslim brothers and sisters who are also fasting Ramadan. So we wanted to share with you an update on important developments, and I'm not sure that everybody is noticing when it comes to Palestine and Israel at the moment. So actually, for the first time, we're not going to be broadcasting this session online because we might be sharing some sensitive issue, and we haven't really thought about sharing it yet. We don't know if sharing it is the right thing at the time being. But you're our friends, you're committed, and I think it's very important for everybody to know what is happening in the country. I'm sure some of you might be more aware of some of the things that are happening, but not everything. Unless you are joining from the Mossad or the Israeli intelligence forces, and you would have a much better insight on what's happening in the country and in the region. And we're happy to give you the mic, and you could give us a presentation of what's happening and what are your plans for the rest of the year. So there is something that is not common in the Middle East, nor within Islam, and definitely not in Palestine. But the person in the picture is Dr. or Sheikh Bassam Jarrar. He is a Palestinian scholar, a Muslim cleric, who's a weekly preacher. He's very well known and respected in Palestine, and today, thanks to YouTube and social media around the whole region. He has been one of the very few people who started in the 1990s introducing a new concept in Islam, translating letters and words into numbers, and following dates, and doing some predictions. And he has been, since I was a little child, he started his predictions that in 1991, or maybe a bit earlier, that Israel will stop to exist in the first quarter of 2022. Between March and June. I am not a person of prophecies. I know that some Christians in the world have used this technique in a way. That is not my theology, and I hope it's not your theology. And this is something very new in Islam. Although it has its historical roots, I tried to research it a little bit in previous centuries, but also pre-Islamic time. The Arabs or Arab tribes used to use words and translate these words into numbers. Now, all of this is fine, but the problem is that he has become somehow like a prophet in Palestine. So when you're in the Palestinian streets, you hear in conversations, are you a believer or not? There is somehow many thousands, or not, if not tens of thousands of Palestinians who genuinely believe that this prophecy is coming true. And that is by itself something that is very worrying, because it's, as we know, when people start thinking of prophecies and end-time theology, that is somehow one of the ingredients of a recipe of disaster. In the beginning, in March, Israel was completely ignoring these numbers, but people can notice there's a rise in attacks that are happening inside Palestine or Israel. From Palestinians, mainly it is lone wolves, as the media would use it. And I think, and now Israel is referring, some of their analysts, that this is somehow connected. This is a problematic thing, and especially with the war in Ukraine, there is this end time thinking in the region, and that's very problematic for us. So he, in his prophecy or in his understanding, they don't use the word prophecy, but in his reading of the end time date in the Quran for the state of Israel, he says not before March and not after the end of June. So I think things might continue to escalate with people just looking at certain international incidents, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, as all of somehow like have a role in this disaster that is happening. Another part is at Al-Aqsa Mosque. Last year, when there was more violence, when Gaza was engaged, Al-Aqsa Mosque had more international media attention. Maybe this year, maybe it's part of it is because of the war in Ukraine and Russia, the war in Europe. Less attention is being given to the Middle East, especially that the level of violence is nothing compared to the war in Ukraine and Russia. So Israeli fanatic groups or extremist groups, Zionist groups, have started to make requests or encouraging their followers to go into Al-Aqsa Mosque during the month of Ramadan, with all of the tension that is in the air inside Palestine and Israel and in the region and in the world. Many Palestinians started to have a campaign. It's let's go and be present in Al-Aqsa Mosque. So people, it's their job. It's what we call them in Arabic, al-murabitin, the people who sit and protect Al-Aqsa by their presence. So you can see the army is in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and people just sit, either hold their Quran or any book or whatever or whatever they have, and they just sit and wait under the shade of a tree or the shade of a building. Some people, of course, younger people, and try to be more somehow are more courageous, more foolish. I don't know how we use it, but they go and, you know, it is wherever the army is, they bring a chair and they sit and they look the army into their eyes. In a way, it is that we are present, we are here, and we're not going anyway, and we are determined to stay. So this has been really very much, and it's something that we all admire when young people want to say to power that we're not afraid, we're willing to pay the price to carry the cross if we may, and to sit and to challenge the authorities. And this is what many young people have been doing. Even the older people, they're sitting with patience, waiting sometimes until sunset when they are able to break their fast, or sunrise when Ramadan would start. So they will. So they sit and they watch and try to protect Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the holiest places in Islam, by their own presence. Even young girls come and do their homework or try to do, like, on their time off, to memorize the Quran in Al-Aqsa Mosque. Everybody is present, people. And in a way, it's a beautiful testimony of nonviolent resistance. People are looking the army with they're very well equipped with weapons and arms, and they just sit and they look at them into the eye and say, we are present, and we are we're determined to stay and to protect this holy place. So Al-Aqsa Mosque is a place of high tension, but it's not always that it remains like as a way of nonviolent and people defending people with their presence. The presence of the young people with their families and so on, is extremely upsetting to the Israeli army and to the Israeli authorities. So you can see, like, this is something, I don't know if you saw it on your media, but this is like when the army comes and there is some violence in this, attacks a father who is with his son. They came to stay and spend time into Al-Aqsa Mosque to protect Al-Aqsa Mosque by their presence, and they get attacked. So this is a very common scene. Palestinians try to show their children, don't be afraid from the army. We need to be present and protect our holy sites and places with our presence. And then the army just comes in and in a way shatters the image of a father. As you know, it is for every child or for many children, the father plays the role of the superhero. And you know, people feel very proud, especially the kids, when they're walking with their father, going to the mosque, and they see the father is being that they are with their father, they are in a safe place, they're doing a noble practice by defending their holy sites, their country. And then the army comes and beats the father and makes the father look very weak. In a way, it damages very much the psychology of the people. But it's not only this, they're also attacking journalists. So this is a girl that we know. Her mother is a close friend of Sabil. She engages with us in our interfaith or activities. She engages with us in our, even when we have a special ecumenical Christian worship, she attends the worship by her presence. She comes sometimes to our visit, to our trips. So we know the daughter, we know her mother. I know, and I know, of course, her, the rest of the family. So she is a journalist student, and she was using her, she's a student studying journalism. She used her camera phone to document the harassments of the Israeli army in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And the army went and hit her with a stick, and they broke her phone. They broke also her hand, which is more important. And she is still, she is in very much pain and very much suffering. But that is, I mean, that's another story of continuous attacks that are happening on the Palestinians. But also over here, if you watch very closely, you will see how an 85-year-old man was pushed by the Israeli army at Al-Aqsa Mosque. So you can see, I mean, it's although Israel and the army and the police says that they are not interested in escalating the situation in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, all of this happened in the last 2 days, all of these incidents. And this is just one part of multiple events or incidents that are taking place, not only in Al-Aqsa Mosque, but throughout Jerusalem and throughout the whole country. So tension is on. And yesterday, since yesterday morning, this is, I mean, it wasn't very tense, the situation. There were, yes, some young people at Al-Aqsa Mosque, but this is what the Israeli army was doing at Al-Aqsa. It's one of the holiest places for the Muslim world. During the month of Ramadan, the army was shooting these So the army was shooting tear gas inside Al-Aqsa. And while they were shooting them into the windows, the historical windows of Al-Aqsa Mosque, a place of a world heritage, a place, I mean, a building that is over 1,400 years old, a place of high importance at the time of the mosque. You can see the damage that they have destroyed all of the windows by firing tear gas, because there were some young people in the mosque who wanted to pray and did not want to leave. Because it's being present in Al-Aqsa Mosque is something that people want to do, something that people feel that it's their duty. I mean, all of the windows were destroyed. These are beautiful windows done. I mean, some of them are hundreds of years old, have been completely damaged and shattered with no apology or without any justification for this to happen. I mean, Saturday in general, in Palestine and throughout the Middle East, Easter is the big Christian holiday. It is not Christmas. It is not Epiphany. Easter is the holiday for us. Very much for the Eastern churches, less for the Western churches. But even within the Western churches, they have started to copy the traditions of the Eastern churches. One of the traditions and one of the oldest traditions, and I'm proud to be one of the Christian families that that participate, or the historical Christian families that participate in this event on the day before Easter, Holy Saturday, Holy Fire, we call it. It is when it's, there's different versions of the story. One version of the story says that since the resurrection of Christ, or since Easter, light would come out miraculously out of the empty grave, and it would light the candles of the faithful. And the faithful people would take this light and share the good news of the resurrection by each one lighting the candle of each of the other. We do this, I mean, throughout Jerusalem. Everybody lights their candle from another person saying Christ is risen. Another story says that this was a tradition that developed after, at a time of persecution of the church by one of the Muslim leaders or rulers over 1,000 years ago, and where it was not allowed to say that Jesus is risen. And people started to doing it silently by sharing the light from one candle to another. There are documented travelers who have said that this has been a tradition from the 8th century, 7th century, and it's a major event. Some people take it into that this becomes a holy fire that does not burn. There's so many different versions. It depends. We're not going to go into this perspective, but there is something that is really beautiful. Like whenever I used to study or I travel around, if I want to visit something that was physically started in Jerusalem, I'd go to an Orthodox church, any Orthodox church, and the candles that are lit in that Orthodox church come from Jerusalem. And I know maybe one of my family, or maybe I was one of the people, because my family is one of the first families that shared this light, that we took it out of the grave and it ended up in a church in New York, or in a church in Chicago, or in Greece, or in Cyprus, or even in Turkey, or anywhere around the world. On Friday, all of the churches put off the candles. There is no fire on Good Friday, or Great Friday, as we call it, or Sad Friday. So that is on Friday. There's no candles lit, and on Saturday the light comes into these churches, and it becomes the responsibility of the church to keep the light alive. If the light goes off, we cannot just turn it on by a candle. We have to get it from another church. So the light continues somehow. It is living the whole year and only goes off on Friday. It's a very major event. I remember people used to come to Jerusalem when I was a little kid. It was the tradition, even before cars, will take it from Jerusalem and they would run to Ramallah, and from Ramallah they will go to the villages, and from the and I mean, each city will distribute it to different cities. People will take it to the boat, to Greece, to Cyprus, to Egypt, to the rest of the Arab world. It's a major event here. This is like in Ramallah. Everybody, all of the Christians of Ramallah, wait at the center of Ramallah, waiting for the light. They take the light and they take it back home. They take it to the cemeteries. It's a very important part in our Palestinian Christian presence in the country. You can look, I mean, from Ottoman times, the church would be packed with 15,000 people in the yard, all of around the building, around all of the rest of the holy city of Jerusalem. People would come from Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, the Far East. All of the Orthodox or all of the Christians who are in pilgrimage, they would come and wait to take the fire back home. And it was like, you take the fire on Saturday, you maintain it throughout Sunday, you have worship on Sunday, and immediately you go back to your country on Monday. We still have this event that on Monday we go and say goodbye to the tourists or the pilgrims at Jaffa, because people would just want to go, and they're in a rush to share the good news that this year was also another blessed year, that God has given us a miracle, a witness that this grave is empty and life is stronger than death. This year we're having a serious problem. For the first time, Israel has decided, it's multiple times, that they're going to limit the Christians to be only 1,000 people in the old city for the service and inside the church. So that is something that is that means like If you only look at the Christians in the old city by itself, there are around 5,000 people. With all of the Christians who are flocking to Jerusalem on this important day, there's no space for us to go to church. So they are denying us our right to worship. And in a major, they do pre-made arrangements with Russian or for the Hebrew-speaking Christians, who are a big percentage now within the Israeli community. They're almost matching, or their numbers are greater than our numbers. So they give them the presence. So you might go, or if you come to Easter into Jerusalem, most of the churches will be, most of the worshippers who are inside the church are not Palestinians. Some of them are living in the country, they are Israeli Christians, and that's fine. But the people who are next to the church were not allowed or not able, without a military permit or a police permit, to be inside the church to practice within our heritage. So for me, I don't know, it's my family. Now they're asking us to go to the police and apply for a permit to go and to take part in a worship, in a service that for over 2,000 years, my family has been taking part of this, sharing the good news from the empty grave. So people are very frustrated, people are angry, especially with all of the media. There was a huge campaign 5 years or 6 years ago, and people went to the High Court, and the High Court said, okay, Palestinian Christians have the right to worship in the church, but we will not make a verdict. You go and deal with it with the police. And people went into the police, and the police started to give and negotiate with the community. And we are people are living under military occupation. We cannot get everything. I mean, there's no real justice. But they said, you go to the police, and the police did some consensus and so on, and we were able to worship. 2 days ago, the Israeli army and the Israeli police delivered the news that it is to the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate that only 500 Christians will be allowed to go into the church. This is like the lowest number of Christians ever to worship. In 2020, it was the time of the pandemic, and there were maybe there were less than 500 people, but that was a time, this was a special time. Maybe there was around 100 or 200 people who were clergy and monks representing the different churches that are in Jerusalem. This time it's a place of tension. So I got a phone call from the community and from the people that we're working with. Now we were able to get an appointment again. So tomorrow at 3 p.m. we have an appointment with the High Court in Israel. We're filing a lawsuit against the Israeli government and against the Israeli police. We're challenging their decision to only restrict it to 500 people to go into the church. So we really need solidarity with our brothers and sisters around the world. If you are able to help to exert pressure, because they are, I mean, it's what has remained a certain, unfortunately for us, a part of our presence in this holy city. We have to fight even for the right to go to church. We have to fight for the right to go to the mosque. We have to fight for the right to light a candle, to share a lit candle. In a way, while we should be really fighting for equal rights and the right for self-determination, but Israel continues to make it more difficult for us so that it lowers our expectations. And that is extremely frustrating. There was yesterday, on Sunday, there was also a beautiful mass at Ikrit. Ikrit is one of the villages that were depopulated in 1948. And each year there is a small number of the community comes and rings the bells of the church saying it is Easter. Most of the Christians of this Ikrit community, or a big percentage of them, follow the Western calendar. And yesterday was a beautiful ceremony, or Sunday, sorry, not yesterday, because many people decided we will only worship in the church that our ancestors or our grandparents came from. And this church is especially for our elderly people. This is where their parents got married. This is where most likely they were baptized. So that was a beautiful testimony of hope within the Christian community and within Palestine in general, whether it is Muslims or Christians. Because as we approach the anniversary of another Nakba, it shows that the people are still stubborn and still somehow naive, I don't know if it's the word naive or foolish or determined, to see the right of return, to see that, I mean, they're not letting go of their rights. Even so much Israel tries to sometimes put, on one level, they make like it is our major fight is to be able to light a candle in a church. But then when we think and we imagine and we dream, our minds are, I mean, they're going to something that is anybody would say this is not possible, the right of return. Yet we believe, and where we do it is on Easter, in our depopulated villages. Something that is also something that is unique and we want to share with. There is a church in the old city close to the Holy Sepulchre Church. It's called Alexander Church. So this church has been a high tense place with between the Russian government and the Israeli government. So Israel says that this they have confiscated this land for one reason or another without going into details. But Netanyahu promised in one of the different deals that he made with the Russian government or with the authorities there, that he would return the church. And yesterday, without any prior notice or without real situation, without anything, the Israeli court, without even calling the defenders of the church or the lawyers or the Russian church, said that, okay, this land belongs to the Israeli government or to a settler organization, does not belong to the church. And for the first time, you can look it up, Putin and Russia sends out a very strong message to the church, to the Israeli government. Now, okay, we know with all of the problems that are happening in Russia and Ukraine, and Putin is not the best person who defends democracies and so on. But in a way, many of our Christian community is looking at with somehow hope. This is the first time that a major power from the West puts their foot down and says to Israel, you cannot just continue confiscating Christian land and Christian churches and taking over the land. Over 45% of the old city of Jerusalem, 45% belongs to one church, the Greek Orthodox Church. Israel almost on an annual basis confiscates, takes over certain of these properties, leaving our community with less resources, and which has started to make some of the church leaders feel that they have become cornered. They're making more statements. If you follow the World Council of Churches, if you follow their social media, they're coming and they're becoming frustrated with the Israeli government. The Israeli government is pushing our people and our communities and our churches. And we know how much we're frustrated all from the churches, from their lack of ability to do action. But this is something somehow like a major change that we hope that the church, that the Christian church would rely more on support and solidarity from Christian or traditionally Christian countries or Western countries who would defend the properties of the churches in one of the most holiest places, or the most or a city with very big significance in the world. These are, I mean, there's so many things that are happening. I wanted to share with you some of what is happening in a way just to put you in touch with all of the difficulties of the things and the challenges that are happening today in Jerusalem, or this week in Jerusalem. If you are able to, we're working on creating a press release for tomorrow when we go into to the High Court. Maybe we will be able to keep people updated. Maybe, I don't know if it's people are interested. If you could gather more people, we could have a Zoom session. It's a major part. It's a major challenge tomorrow at the High Court. I mean, if there is no justice at the High Court inside Israel, then the whole, I mean, there's no hope. We're not fighting for the right of return. We're not fighting for something that is like, I mean, which is our part of our rights. We're just saying the right to go into church on our holy days, on one of our holy days, the day before Easter. So we haven't really have a structure. We just wanted to make it just like for the meeting. I haven't been reading the messages in the chat. So I'm going to see if people have asked questions, or if you'd like, we're a small group, I think it's fine. If people would like to share. You're a Christian Zionist and you're angry with Palestinian Christians. We're gonna put you in the waiting room. I don't think that we have any of these folks here. So you could maybe if you want, we can. So okay, is the IDF continuously present in Al-Aqsa Mosque compound? Thank you, Mervin. No, they are not always present at inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They are present in at the doors of Al-Aqsa Mosque. At the outer gates, which is, but that doesn't mean that whenever they feel like going in, there's nothing that stops them. On average, there's around 1,000 Israeli settlers or Israeli activists who go into the country, who go into Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they are always escorted by the Israeli personnel. So that is. The Israeli army also controls who goes in and who and check everybody who's leaving Al-Aqsa Mosque. So in a way, even if they are present at Al-Aqsa Mosque, they still control. They're not inside it, but they affect who goes into it. Yes, in the US, it's called Good Friday. It's very interesting in the US, or I mean, in English, they call it Good Friday. In Greece, where I studied, it's called Megalos. It's Great Friday, or great, or great as more like Alexander the Great. In Palestine or in Arabic, it's called Very Sad Friday. And we call it Sad Friday for multiple reasons. One thing is because Jesus died. I don't know how people can call the day that Jesus died is Good Friday. Maybe very selfish. That's why. Oh, it's the day where we have been saved. We feel bad for a person that we loved here and somebody that we knew. Jesus died. We don't care if he died for us or not. We're sad because he died. And another part is that he died on without a funeral. That is a catastrophe. The people who do not get a funeral are sometimes, even at a certain time within the Palestinian movement, we said traitors should not get funerals. We will not take them to church or take them to mosque if people have left or have been. But even that, people stopped doing it. They said, you know, we need to give mercy to everybody. A funeral is a right. It's the right to say goodbye to a person that we love, and people show the respect of that person by going to their funeral. And if we eat from food that is offered, this is something like it's the last dinner or meal that person that we love invites us. And for us, call it Sad Friday because Jesus did not get a funeral. And for churches, we have this funeral of Christ, where everybody comes and everybody gives condolences to everybody. It's very sad. We decorate the coffin with flowers. It's a huge ceremony. Yes, we call it Sad Friday. If we are, so it depends on your church and your theology. It depends on what you have used to, the way that you translate Good Friday. But among all of the different denominations, it is Sad Friday. It's called Very Sad Friday, in a way. And yes, say yes. So yes, I will. Okay, it's before we open it up for people to share, I'm just make sure that people have not. The village of Ikrit was bombed and destroyed years ago after the villagers had been forced out. Only the church remains. Yes, it's very interesting because it's the village was depopulated in 1948. The destruction happened after the Israeli High Court said that the people of the village have the right to go back to their village since they were refugees inside the state of Israel. Some of them are still present in Lebanon or in Syria. But the people who have remained were still not allowed to go back to their village, even though the Israeli High Court said you have the right to go back. So Israel just ignored the High Court. I mean, yes, over 152 Palestinians were injured. Of course, when we say injured, it wasn't like we're excluding trauma or people from tear gas. There's people who were hit by rubber bullets or live ammunition. And over 400 people were arrested, and Israel released them all at the end of the day at Kalandia checkpoint. Have you any news with Jordan asking? So here's the question, Omar. Have you any news with Jordan asking Israeli government to account? I mean, it's true. Jordan has some connections with the Israeli government, and somehow it's Israel respects somehow the government there and takes their remarks seriously. But honestly, they have no power over the state of Israel. The state of Israel does whatever they want. So yes, there have been some statements of that the Jordanian government is upset, especially that they are the custodians of the holy places, both Muslim and Christian, in the holy in Jerusalem, but not much has been done. So, I mean, from our different countries and I mean, what do you expect or hope us from our different countries and churches to do in support of your struggle? You know, it is, I don't know if it's a struggle. I mean, it is a part of the struggle. Now we're saying that we want to go to pray on Easter Sunday. We want to go and take part to light a candle. You know, that's not something that's not like our end dream. We're just saying it's something that is basic. To be doing it, I know many of the Christians in China, in North Korea, in many countries around the world, maybe Saudi Arabia, Iran, do not have the right to practice their faith. But we're speaking about theoretically a country that your countries who are democratic view this country as a democratic state. So that is very upsetting, and this is why we are very upset. It's not that the persecution is new to the church or even for us as Palestinian Christians, it's that it is being done by a country that many churches look at as a state, as a democratic state. Even with Pope Francis, I like him, I respect him a lot. I think he's doing great jobs and so on. But in a way that he is hoping to extend his visit and visit the Orthodox Patriarch, to engage in somehow ecumenical dialogue here in Jerusalem, as if Israel is harboring a dialogue that is bringing Christians from Catholic tradition and the Orthodox tradition together to bridge gaps and so on. We're not able to light a candle over here. I don't know why our church leaders, whether Orthodox or Catholic or whatever, they're meeting and giving Israel legitimacy, while we have to go to court, to the High Court to light a candle. That's very sad, very frustrating. So thank you, Bishop Tony Green. Please, prayer is very important. This is what has kept the church going for centuries. Good came from God's Friday. Thank you, Valerie. Came from God. Good came from God's Friday. That's what Valerie written. Something to reflect at. But I mean, it's I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural thing, or I don't know if it's a theological. Maybe it's very cultural. I mean, sometimes you get a very good will when somebody dies. That doesn't mean that you are happy that this person dies. I find it very difficult. I mean, for us, still the death of Jesus is a catastrophe more than we cannot see anything good that came out of it. I mean, we understand that there is something that our salvation came, but we saw the resurrection from it, but we think it was still a tragedy. It's very cultural. I don't know. It's worth to write about. Yeah, I don't know. It's with all due respect to so many bishops and so on. I mean, it's the problem is that when they put a limit on us, the people, not on the church leaders. So church leaders have these VIP cards. I think theologically they're very wrong. That you, as a leader of a parish, you're allowed to go, you know, with red carpets, go inside the church, you know, sit in a room, air conditioned and so on. while we and our children get beaten up going to church and so on. I mean, that's not my version of. So I think so they don't feel the need to issue a statement. Maybe sometimes they feel the need to protect their VIP card. I mean, it's very sad. But I mean, it is, I cannot, I find it very problematic. I mean, I definitely can tell I mean, it is from liberation theology and so on. I wouldn't think that Jesus would worship inside, inside such a church. He would worship with us at the checkpoints and, or if we get arrested. I've been arrested in my life 4 times during these Easter holidays. And I spend, sometimes it's very sad for me, not because I'm spending the time that the light miraculously comes out in jail. I think it's beautiful to be in jail while the light is coming out. I mean, but I feel very sad that I'm not being able to participate in continuing the witness of my family's tradition in that inside the church. But in a way, I can think about it. Maybe we started a new tradition, being in jail. I don't know how 4 times is not enough to be a tradition. We have to ask Darren Myers. What do you think? 4 times makes it a tradition? So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry if I'm missing some questions. Okay, so maybe it's better because I see most of these are comments rather than questions. Do international pilgrims have means of speaking out against the injustice? Do international pilgrims have means of speaking out against the injustices of these days? Do they? Yes, I mean, it's very sad. Big part of it is that pilgrims who used to come only for Easter stopped coming, especially the Greeks, the Cypriots, and I mean, or the Russians, because they don't feel that this is a beautiful way to end Lent, being beaten up by the police and, not being allowed to go into church. So some of those people are very poor pilgrims who come. They are the ones who come and stay with Palestinian families in the old city. So, and in a way, by their presence, they support the Christian families. It's very common in the churches in the old city to find people who have their godfathers and godmothers are actually pilgrims from either Cyprus or Turkey or Greece, Christian pilgrims who when we baptize our children just after Easter, they become the godparents. So in a way, it has become like a very common thing in Jerusalem. Now, it's not happening because those people stopped coming. They don't like to be beaten up just before Easter. It's not fun. Okay, so I'm going to look for questions. Okay, Margaret, so.
Thanks very, very much, Omar, and many, many thanks, deep thanks for this opportunity you're giving us today to hear and see exactly what is taking place. Our media, I'm speaking from Glasgow in Scotland. Scotland is a country with many organizations and individuals supporting the Palestinians' cause. But our media outlets are showing the violence, for example, at Al-Aqsa. But you are giving us the nuanced picture of what is involved, the non-violent, the sitting to protect Al-Aqsa that Muslim people of all ages are undertaking in a non-violent way. Also, these very moving and troubling details about the restriction on attendance at church. And I think your idea, if you are able to send us a short press release about this, and particularly as it is, affecting members of your community, as we are, the Easter weekend has finished here for us in the West in a way, but yours is coming. it would be very helpful if I think there are probably a number of amongst us who would be able to pass on such a press release to journalists in our own towns and cities. I could do that in Glasgow. I would gladly do that.
Thank you. We're having a meeting at 9 o'clock now in Jerusalem, and we want to see. I mean, we're preparing. You know, it's part of it is that like within 24 hours, how can you apply for?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
For a court, while we don't, I mean, Israel did not share with us any information.
Yeah.
You know, all they have to do is in front of the high court is just say, oh, for security reasons, oh, for the pandemic, oh, for what, for. So they apply restrictions on us, and I mean, and there isn't enough time to prepare. I mean, that has become a tradition. We cannot go into church without a fight. It's not like in previous years we were allowed to do it.
No.
Military order or a police order for us not to go in. So we will have to see what is the wise thing. So you're the first people who know that there is actually a court case that is happening tomorrow. People don't know yet the situation. So we'll prepare for it, and I will let you know. Expect an email coming out from Sabine, and I hope you will get the attention. It will be a petition. I don't know. Let us think what the community wants.
Yes, indeed. We'll be guided by what you feel is best, and would want to be guided by what you feel is best. And I can understand the pressures on you with the case tomorrow, but I know that we do want to do what we can and when we can. Yeah. Thank you very much, Omar.
Thank you. Darrell?
Yes, thank you. I'm quite astonished that, as far as I know, our news media did not talk anything about those broken windows in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, so venerated, ancient they are. I don't suspect they've been in the New York Times, or is it more than one window? Is it quite a few of the windows?
Yes. I mean, it's actually over 9 windows.
Overnight. I mean, what would happen if somebody broke these kinds of windows in the Vatican or something, or the National Cathedral or something? I mean, I think this is outrageous, and why our media does not know about it. And I'm going to suggest, because I'm meeting with some people from Churches for Middle East Peace next Sunday, including the daughter of Mitri Raheb, who will be here in Southern California. Why doesn't the Churches for Middle East Peace and some of our churches stand with our Muslim brothers and sisters and say, we're going to take this case, we're going to make this thing known that the windows in the Al-Aqsa Mosque are being broken. We will not stand quietly while our Muslim brothers and sisters in Palestine have to go through this outrage.
I mean, it's I completely agree with you, Darrell. But I think it's if we're having problems, they're standing for us for the right of the worship of Christians into to the church. It's pretty sad. I mean, I wish that the church even would extend its solidarity not only to its local community but also to our brothers and sisters, regardless of their faith.
Yes. Well, worship of the accents of Christians is of course understood. I mean, by us anyway. I just think this is a real opportunity also to stand with our Muslim brothers and sisters, as well as making our statement as Christians. Thank you.
Definitely, I agree. Thank you, Darrell. Yes, Diane.
Yes, my question is similar to Darrell's. I was wondering if Christians are sitting with the Muslims when they're sitting up against the police. But I also thought about the 500 Christians who are allowed to to worship on Holy Saturday with the fire, and it's almost like Israel is choosing who those Christians are. And I know when I come in, last time I came in I think was 2 or 3 years ago. I came in with a tour group. Of course, they ask you where you're going and everything like that. When I left, they asked me where my hat was. So they give specific hats to those tour groups that they have already sanctioned. And I'm sure that the internationals who are coming into Jerusalem, they're probably going to get the first dibs on being the ones. I mean, it seems, and just I'm wondering how can we confront this? This is just it is outrageous, and yeah, and the same kind of thing, of course, is going on with the Ibrahimi mosque, but that's been going on for a longer period of time.
Thank you. Actually, I want to share. I mean, this is something from. So this is a Palestinian Christian from Nazareth, and he's been, I mean, for almost a week now, sleeping in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And there are other Palestinian Christians who attend Al-Aqsa Mosque in a way of show solidarity. We understand that there is lots of threats that are targeting at Al-Aqsa Mosque. But however, I mean, it does not mean the presence of few people doesn't mean that the presence of everybody is needed. In the old city, there's also many churches who are under threat or have been confiscated or are under the process of being confiscated. Which is, I mean, it's you know, we are overwhelmed with the problems, Diane. It's not that people don't want to show solidarity, but when everybody is having a fire at their own house, people don't feel the energy, or sometimes just to go to somebody else's house and put off the fire. Although some people do, and that's very noble. Maria.
Hello. I want to ask you or to share my concern with you, Omar, as someone who has been trying hardly for over a decade to put the reality of Palestinian churches and communities on the spot for the Western churches. I'm talking about the Spanish-speaking world, particularly. I have always found the difficulty of giving visibility to all the things that are happening. And because this reality is invisible somehow, and I don't find the news in the media outlets that daily for hours, I systematically scan and read. I knew about the windows in Al-Aqsa. I knew about everything that has gone on during the whole week since this attack began, since the beginning of the Ramadan, in fact. But the thing is that the reality of the violation of freedom of religion, freedom of worship for Christians is not very visible, is not very well known. The heads of the churches, as you know, and very well, very rarely make statements. When they do it, they are so vague and so cautious that they don't really address the magnitude of the problems. And I have many times been met with people skeptical, saying, no, that's not true. Israel respects the freedom of worship for Christians. Christians don't have any problem. And you know, it's not only the Christian Zionists. People are very, very naive. Christian people in the West are very naive about what's going on, all the things that, and we know there are a lot of things going on, like you said. I mean, families whose mere existence and presence in the old city is under threat, as you know, and many, many other things. But it is very for me at least, it's very hard to find the right and the full information in a timely way. So I would like to ask you, how do we catch up with all these news and realities, if there is any site or, I don't know, outlet, media outlet or whatever, where we can find almost in real time all this news about what is going on?
Thank you, Maria. I mean, it's. I have to admit, there's plenty of news that is being covered when it comes to Palestine and Israel, with all of the things that are happening in the country. A big problem that we're facing is that there's so much information. For the people who are familiar with the Sabil weekly newsletter or the Wave of Prayer, it's very difficult to decide on which items to pray for. I mean, Israel has been since the beginning of Ramadan, has been doing continuous raids inside the West Bank. Some of it is as a response to the violence that has erupted, or a number of attacks that happened inside Israel, terrorist attacks where civilians were killed. Others are just, I mean, that's a daily part of living under occupation. You know, when there is an occupation, they need to maintain it by using force to scare the people. There's so many things that are happening when it comes, if just to monitor land confiscation, I mean, there's so much information you have to pick and choose. My advice is people need to pick on something that speaks to them. If, for example, home demolitions is something that is of concern for you, then you should focus on this only home demolitions. And this is
yes,
where.
But Omar, excuse me, but I was referring in particularly to the reality of that are facing the Christian churches and communities, because I am trying to, to give visibility to that among the Christians in my region, to show them that no, Christians also are facing several problems, violations, restrictions, and so on.
Yeah, I think it's the major problem here, Maria. For example, I live in this, I live in a building that is entirely, all of the people who live in it are Christians. The building next to us is entirely also Christian, although we live in an area that, actually we thought that there was no Christians historically in this area. However, during 2020, when it was the time for sharing the light and people were saying, please, because it was the pandemic, so the scouts were bringing the lights for Christian, the Holy Fire. So we found out that there were 80 families living in my area who are Christian. In a way, so yesterday the Israeli army came in to arrest somebody and they fired tear gas in the whole area. You know, it is both Muslims and Christians felt it. It's not like we live in separate communities or in an island, a Christian island. We all get affected by the incursion. We all get affected by the tear gas. When Israel does a lockdown and they close, for example, the checkpoint, the other day I spent 3 hours at the checkpoint. I'm a Christian. The car next to me, I don't know if it was a Christian or a Muslim, but this occupation is affecting us as Palestinians. And we cannot isolate. I think it's sometimes people expect us to isolate and to divide the Palestinians into a Christian group or a Muslim group or a Samaritan group. Even Samaritans suffer the same way as we. Their numbers are much smaller. But I know there's 3 Samaritans who are currently in an Israeli jail for political reasons, because they are part of the Palestinian resistance. So it's more complicated. We're just one people. I mean, it's when we look at Ukraine now, for example, they're being attacked by Russia, and the bomb falls in Kiev or somewhere. We don't know if this family is a Christian family or a Muslim family or a Catholic or an Orthodox or a Protestant or a Jehovah's Witness. They're Ukrainians, and the same thing applies for us as Palestinians. Sometimes it's very difficult somehow if we need to divide our people into 2 groups and say, okay, just give us attacks that are specifically against Christians. However, there are certain attacks. And this is according to a number of studies. And I think we should have host an event here, because I think it's extremely important. And Sabil is working on a publication or preparing, is working on the matter. There is a book, you can get it on Amazon, both or on Kindle. You can get it in hard copy or soft copy, and it says Jesus was a Jew. This study is done by 3 professors from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and they have started to study how Christians are portrayed in the Israeli curriculum. Now, when you look at the Israeli curriculum, there are 4 different curriculums. There is one curriculum that is specific for for Palestinian Israelis, and we're around 20% of the population. Then there is a group for Orthodox Jews. And there's the group for secular Jews, and then there is for national education, for nationalistic Israelis, a form of Zionism, or different from Zionism. They see the country as, they see their connection to the country from a faith perspective rather than from an ideologic perspective. But in a way, they studied some of the Israeli curriculum, and they see so much hatred that is focused on Christians. And this is really we started to pay attention because a number of churches get attacked by Israeli or religious Jews, and they attack these churches not because they are Palestinians. Now, Palestinians get attacked because we're Palestinians, but they attack churches not because they're Palestinians, but because they're Christian. And in a way, we have to understand that it is for Jews, whenever they study their history and they see persecution, the church is somewhere in the background or present. And in a way, Jews have been living most of their lives or throughout history in majority Christian countries. Now they're looking at Christianity as a minority religion among the majority of Jews. And in a way, it is, some people come and see if they hear that the church has done anti-Semitism, has done so much persecution, and we're not denying it, the church is responsible for many ugly things. Now it is for them the time to fight back. So they fight the church because they're Christians. We don't find these attacks on Muslims because they are Muslims. We find attacks on Palestinians because we're Palestinians, and this could be a Samaritan, a Jew, a Palestinian, a Muslim, or a Palestinian Christian. But there is this phenomena of attacking Christians, attacking churches, attacking cemeteries. So many of the cemeteries are being destroyed by these religious Jews. And the church is a coward, or church leaders. They don't come and say, oh, they come and they accept it. Oh, these were irrational Israelis. When the Church of the All Nations was burned out 2 years or a year and a half ago, they just said, oh, it was just somebody who was out of their mind. The Romanian church in a religious neighborhood was burned 3 times already in the last 2 years. And Israel says, oh, these are just foolish teenagers who are acting like this. You know, it's the church the churches in Tiberias. Wherever there are these nationalistic groups of Israelis, these churches are being burnt, and nobody, or Newgate, Jaffa Gate, it's a problem. You know, it's Jaffa Gate, the spitting on the clergy. Or I mean, there's even something that is even worse now. We did not know of this, but you know, it is whenever somebody's wearing a cross. I know many of my family members wear a cross. I don't wear a cross, and or there's a Christian priest who's going. Many of that, they say these prayers, curse prayers. You know, it is for them, these are prayers that curse the church and curse the Christians and so on. And in a way, these are translating into violent actions. And it's a problem. It's continued to grow, this phenomenon, which is extremely problematic. I recommend that you read this book. I think we are running out of time, so I'm not going to be able to answer some of these questions. But I will also, we have Mervyn Russell.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up, Omar, on my question about the IDF presence. I got the impression from what you were saying that the IDF actually deliberately accompanies Jews into the mosque, and the Jews are entering the mosque for the purposes of having some kind of worship within the mosque. Now, I want to be quite definite about this because I am a regular writer to politicians on these affairs. This has not come through, certainly in our media. And I want to be very clear and precise about what I may put in print.
So, okay, I mean, it's, I mean, Israeli settler groups or fanatic extremists are not welcomed at Al-Aqsa Mosque. They get to walk around Al-Aqsa Mosque. Historically, we need to also to be, just to give a bigger picture. Historically, Al-Aqsa Mosque compound was allowed for everybody to go in, whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jew, pilgrim, local, tourist, and so on. There has been throughout the last number of decades, a number of attacks that has made the Muslim authorities there very much worried about who gets into Al-Aqsa Mosque. Part of it is like setting a fire, bringing wine, or bringing wine into Al-Aqsa Mosque, or like sometimes even bringing pork blood. Although we have to admit most of this has been the responsibility of Christian Zionists. But I mean, some Israeli Jews were also responsible for this. So restrictions continue to grow. Now, Israel, what they say that we need to control the doors of Al-Aqsa Mosque because we are the governing power over the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We need to make sure that nobody brings guns into Al-Aqsa Mosque or brings flammable material to try to set the Al-Aqsa on fire again and so on. And when these groups who go into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, we need to escort them. One reason is to defend them from fanatic Palestinians who might hurt them. And another way is just to make sure that they do not engage into worship or doing things that would create tension into Al-Aqsa Mosque. So in a way, it makes sense, you know, for somebody who's living in a different country. The police should interfere to try to cut down the tension. And this is the game of the occupation. Everything they do somehow could be justifiable and could make sense. But honestly, Israel does this. It's because they're an occupying power. As an occupying power, they control everything inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. And the people over here as Palestinians, we have a million reasons to feel that Israel does not always have the best intentions for us or for our properties. So the presence of the Israeli army with guns in Al-Aqsa Mosque is very frustrating and upsetting. It's the same thing when I go into the Holy Sepulchre Church and there's police going around the Holy Sepulchre with guns. I don't like it. I tell them take the guns out, but they take me out because they are the ones who have the power. You know, I don't like it. It's but something that you accept it because you're not willing always to walk the extra mile or to pay the price, and you pick your battles. And in a way, because you know that they are stronger, they're able to dictate the laws and the rules. So the situation is complicated, but also very simple. I mean, these groups go into Al-Aqsa Mosque to create trouble. They believe that Al-Aqsa Mosque is the Temple Mount, and they want to either split Al-Aqsa Mosque, different schools, some want to use it at certain times of the day, like how at certain times, like it is, we pray in the morning, you pray in the evening, we pray at sunset, you pray at sunrise. Or they want to physically split it into different parts that Jews control some part and Muslims control some part. The Muslim community is not happy because they feel that this is historically theirs, is recognized to them. And definitely Israel is not a country as an occupying power holding guns who have been responsible for the killing of hundreds, if not thousands of people on Al-Aqsa Mosque in the last 6 decades. Are not willing to negotiate how to split this place between different traditions. So in a way, yes, the army and the police is present. They justify it for different reasons. Some of it could make sense, some of it does not. But the problem is with the whole system and the structure. So there's a question, the Jews don't worship in the mosque, they go in for non-religious purposes. No, some go. Actually, there was a prize in different fanatic groups on that whoever is able to slaughter a sheep or a lamb in Al-Aqsa Mosque would win a prize. Now, I don't know how, I mean, it's a group of foolish people. A number of, I think there were 13 Israeli Jews were arrested trying to make their way into Al-Aqsa Mosque. And they were stopped by the Israeli police, which is a good thing. You know, it is not always the police is doing something that is bad. But you see, it's the, yes.
Would that be a way of kind of preparing for the building of the third temple?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different Jewish theologies when it comes to Al-Aqsa Mosque. The main Orthodox religious leaders see that this is the Temple Mount, that no Jews should go there or engage in worship. So that's the Orthodox, traditional Orthodox perspective. Orthodox Jews continue to say it is not holy to go into Al-Aqsa Mosque. One reason is that they don't know where is the Holy of the Holies, and they should not go with their shoes and another part. So it's a combination of factors. It is mainly nationalistic Jews who want to somehow destroy this mosque and just say that Israel, we have taken over Israel, we've returned this land, why aren't we able to get back the Temple Mount? And it's actually, it continues to grow the number of Israeli Jews who feel that it used to be nobody cared for the building of the third temple. Now their percentages are rising up. They're increasing, so that's a problem. Unfortunately, I think this session was at least I think it was positive. I see some people thought that it was positive and informative. We should try to do it more often, inshallah. But I think for now, the time is off. We want to thank you. Please look forward to receiving an email from us. Help us light a candle at the Church of the Resurrection on Easter, at least Easter. Wishing you all the best from Sabil and from the Kumi community. Keep up the good work, and we'll let you know what happens tomorrow at the High Court. Regardless what the Israeli government says, I personally will try my best to light my candle. So that is my position. But anyways, I'm going there just for the fun, to speak truth to power. But I know what I'm doing on Easter. Okay, friends. Take care and God bless you.
Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.